And so when I got this bus, the person I bought it from told me that it can only drive for 2 hours, and then you have to sit and let it rest for half an hour, which probably should have been a good alarm bell for me. But for some reason, I was just, overwhelmed by this beautiful Volkswagen with all these windows around it.
Episode 380, a Life Outside the Box series episode, Life on the Road, traveling from Chile to Alaska in a Volkswagen bus, with Ben Jamin. This is the Adventure Sports Podcast Life Outside the Box series brought to you by 180 Tech. If you've ever dreamed of an existence that doesn't include 9 to 5 Mondays through Fridays and without cubicles or commutes, this is your place to be inspired and to learn that you too can live a life outside the box. This episode is brought to you in part by Kind. Kind makes delicious, healthy snacks using whole ingredients. If you guys haven't tried it yet, their pressed bars by Kind are the best in my opinion. Go try the Mango Apple Chia. It's awesome. We've got a special offer for you guys to try 20 Kind snacks with their new snack pack. You can enjoy 50% off and free shipping on your first snack pack when you subscribe to it through Snack Club, which is Kind's monthly snacks subscription service. Go to kindsnacks.com/sports for more details. That's kindsnacks.com/sports to learn more and to subscribe to the snack pack. Hey guys, this is a full-length example episode of our Life Outside the Box series shows. You can get full access to these shows if you're a patron of ASP. You can do that by going to patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. It's only $5 a month, and it gets you exclusive access to these Life Outside the Box interviews, as well as an entry into our demo product giveaways. You'll also have opportunities to sign up to be a guest host on future interviews if you would like. And if you don't want to do that, you can always pose questions for upcoming interviews. So head over to patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast and get yourself signed up. Now enjoy Ben Jamin's Life Outside the Box episode for free.
Hey friends, thank you so much again for listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast and Life Outside of the Box. We have with us today Ben Jamin. What a cool name. Ben took a Volkswagen bus from the southern part of South America all the way up to Alaska. And we are here today to talk about overlanding and what it took to do such an epic journey. It was a lifestyle, not just a trip. And I am really excited to hear a lot about that. I'm going to say right out of the chute here, you can get more information about what Ben has been up to from kombilife.com. That's KOMBILIFE.com. He also has a most excellent YouTube channel, which is by the same name, Kombi Life. And so, Ben, welcome to the program.
Wow, thanks. That was a great introduction, Kurt. Great to be here.
Kind of a skeleton when you've done so much. I don't hardly know where to start, but tell you what, let's do this. If you can just, in a couple of sentences, paraphrase what it is that you did, then we'll dive into more details.
Well, I did drive an old Volkswagen bus from Chile to Alaska. It did take me about 6 years, and that was mainly because there was a lot of problems along the way, and also because I was documenting the whole thing to share with people via YouTube. But I guess one of the most interesting things about our trip was that my project was to share my bus with the random people that I met on the streets of South, Central, and North America. So I literally was meeting people, and that very night I was sleeping right next to them in the back of my Volkswagen.
Well, that takes a level of trust with humanity, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. And you know what, though? I've got to say, after all of the time and over 100 people in the back of the bus, we really didn't have any major issues. A few clashes of personality, and perhaps some people didn't stay as long as they might have intended to. But for the most part, it just goes to show how good-natured travelers are.
Yeah. I think that, we have done hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and a good number of those have been with world travelers. And I get that same report from everyone, is that people are generally pretty decent. Everyone seems to have a story or two where things kind of went sideways, but by and large, they just say worldwide, people are decent. You know what I mean?
They are, and that's a big part of why I document my travels, is to kind of show that to people. In this day and age, I think a lot of people are scared of what they see on the media and on the news, because often it's only the negative stories that are shared, and some people don't actually want to go traveling. And my experience, not just in the 6 years of this journey, but also the 4 years I was backpacking before that, is that everybody was extremely welcoming, and that people were just there to help you if you needed help, and they wanted to get to know you. They were interested in you. So yeah, I think it's I feel like it's my responsibility to tell people that traveling is an option for everybody. They don't need to be worried about what might happen. I mean, obviously you need to be a little bit cautious, but it shouldn't be something that puts you off, and it's certainly not a showstopper.
Absolutely. The life outside of the box is kind of a play on words. You could think of that as life outside of the corporate cube, or thinking outside of the box, doing things in a unique and new way. But you could also think of it as getting out of the boxes that we've built around ourselves, the boxes that hold us back from having those life experiences. And I think that's what you're alluding to here. We all build these boxes of perception that scare us.
Yeah, and I was actually escaping the corporate box myself. I used to work a 9 to 5, or more likely an 8 till 7 office job, when I was trying to make other people rich for no good reason. And I just kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to go traveling, and I'm going to do it because when I'm on my deathbed, that is the one thing that I cannot regret. I mean, maybe I don't like it. Maybe I decide that I want to go back to my corporate box, but at least I would have tried, and I will know for myself that I won't have any regrets when I'm older.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. And I know that there's some people out there that say, well, there's also a lot of wisdom in having a nice big 401k when you retire, right? But
yeah, that is an argument. People say that often, actually. And you do have to think about that, but I don't know. There's a lot to be said for enjoying part of your life and having, an extended period where you go backpacking and just experience true freedom that you will never experience in your life. And whilst you're physically able to hike up those mountains and slide down those zip lines.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the balancing arguments to that big fat 401k. You might get that anyway. You never know how life's going to turn out. But one thing for certain is that when you have your health and your youth and your enthusiasm, that's the best time to experience these things. Later on in life, you may or may not have that. And so there's an argument for living large when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty much my motto. And, there are so many opportunities in terms of making a business for yourself. Just looking at other things that are successful in different parts of the world and bringing one of those ideas back to your home country that hasn't been done there before. There's a guy, for example, in Chile who basically used to sell hot nuts at the metro station, the underground. And he went to New York City and started doing the same thing, and found out that it was also popular there, but nobody was doing it because they were just selling hot dogs. So he started employing people to sell hot nuts at other places. And now there are hot nuts all around the cities, and he's a millionaire.
Wow. There's a lot to be said for that. When we travel, we can learn so much in ways of new ideas and new opportunities. And if we don't travel, then those opportunities are lost. So I have no doubt that in your travels, you probably have hundreds of things that could develop into a business of some sort if you took the time to wrestle with them and bring them to fruition.
Yeah, there's certainly a few better options than trying to pursue a career making YouTube videos. But being creative in that way is a passion of mine. I enjoy the challenge of film, and it's something I actually learned on the journey. I wasn't, I said I was from an IT background, but when I started documenting my travels, I just had a point and shoot camera, which was kind of a bit crappy, and I was borrowing the equipment from the people that I was picking up, the hitchhikers. So I'd borrow their camera and just keep copying things across on SD cards. I'd borrow their laptop and download some editing software, install it for an evening, do a little bit more editing. And I did that for the first year of my channel.
Wow. So you had a YouTube channel and it's successful at that without even having the equipment. That's remarkable.
Yeah, it took a while. I mean, these days it's a different kind of level of production. I'm trying to always improve uh, our travel series and try to make our travel stories as entertaining and as engaging as possible. So we do have a bit better equipment now, thankfully. A drone and things like that.
Well, tell you what, let's do. Let's step back a little bit and talk a little bit about the kind of the framework for this amazing life adventure. And then we'll dive into more details of the how-to and how you made it work. But the first thing is, you already mentioned you had the corporate IT job. You decided you wanted to travel, and you did some traveling before this trip. What gave you the idea of doing this trip? What was the inspiration for it?
Are you talking about from like giving up my job, or specifically why I started doing this overlanding in the Pan American?
Well, I specifically meant the overlanding, but I think I like the first question even better. So let's do both. Let's start with what got you out of the job.
I think it was going back to what I said before about, that almost like a FOMO, like a fear of missing out, and YOLO, doing a lot of hashtags here, but you only live once. I kind of felt that it was worthwhile sacrificing a little bit of my time and actually my career to see whether it was something I wanted to do. I really do feel that travel is something you can't regret. So being that you can't regret it, and it's one of the few things in life that comes with that guarantee, you might as well give it a go. And I didn't intend for it to turn into a career. I didn't even intend to go to South America to start overlanding. I actually got cornered on my way to New Zealand to go snowboarding for 6 months, and they, as they do frequently now, they put you on the spot and say, do you have an outbound ticket or a return ticket? This wasn't a thing going back like 10 years, but now with the visa restrictions that are worldwide, people want to make sure that you're leaving the country when you arrive. And as I didn't have an outbound ticket from New Zealand, I had to quickly, within I think about an hour, go and find an internet connection and a public computer in the airport and book a ticket to anywhere that didn't have a visa requirement. And that just happened to be South America.
So isn't it fun when you take your first steps out the door and you have some sort of a plan, but isn't it funny how things get changed up on us? And we don't really know until we start walking.
That's pretty much the whole nature of travel is, being able to adapt. It's one of the skills you learn. And it's quite scary for a lot of people that are used to kind of knowing the A to B of their vacation. But I think for any perpetual traveler or long-term backpacker, anybody that's backpacked for even a couple of months will understand that a big part of the joy is not knowing where you're going to sleep tonight or what you'll be doing next week, and just kind of seeing who you meet and where the road takes you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Ben, when you first decided that you were going to transition into a traveling lifestyle, what were the things that were kind of holding you back? Obstacles or fears, or what was in the way that you had to overcome?
There was definitely some fear. I'll be honest with you. A lot of people that follow our YouTube channel, they think that, I must be like absolutely fearless some of the places I go, and I would never do that. And I can't believe you did this. I've been scared every single time that I've changed a continent or started a new trip. I'm nervous about like my future travels. And I think that's just human nature. It's overcoming those fears and putting yourself at the edge of your comfort zone where you really experience the true growth. And so that's why I keep kind of putting myself in those situations.
Yeah, I believe in that very much so. It's part of what the Adventure Sports Podcast has always been about. By challenging ourselves, we grow. And we enlarge our lives and we make memories. Our life experience becomes just so much more valuable. And I fully get what you're talking about. I was just planning my 14ers that I plan to climb this summer. And just in planning the mountains that I want to get up, my heart started racing a little bit, not knowing what the experiences are going to be. But isn't that part of the attractiveness of it as well?
Absolutely, it is. It's a big part of it. And I guess that's what keeps the adrenaline pumping and the enthusiasm there for me at least, after, I guess, well, this will be my 10th year anniversary this year of traveling.
Wow.
I retired from the corporate world 10 years ago.
So if you don't mind, how old were you when you retired from the corporate world?
When I was hired straight out of university. So I've been on the hustle pretty much since I could first get employed, delivering newspapers as a kid, until I finally said, hey, I'm going traveling at the age of 26.
26. And that's a great age to do it. But I think people of all ages, can do it. There's no age limitation to this. But obviously,
there's really not. There's a kind of perception that it's a young man's game or young person's game. Not to be sexist, it's obviously travel is something that both parties do, males and females. My girlfriend has also been traveling for as long as I have, so I was very lucky to meet somebody that's like-minded.
So let's go back to I've got to have a return trip from New Zealand so I can get into New Zealand, and that's what took you to South America. Let's take it from there. How did you decide to get this Volkswagen bus and drive all the way to Alaska?
A few people had advised me against doing that. Some people I knew from South America, they said it's not really done down there, when I got there, I realized that people don't have camper vans. There are no RVs. There's it's difficult to buy a tent in most places in South America. And that's because of, people's fear of being outside. And so it was a little difficult to get started. But after, I think, the first month in South America, I'd started to learn a couple of words of Spanish, and I really didn't speak any Spanish at all. I basically decided I'd had enough of the rather expensive but long bus journeys, because South America is a big place.
Oh yeah.
And I basically decided, you know what, I'm going to get myself some wheels.
Why did you choose a Volkswagen bus?
Probably because I was insane. I think it was one of the poorest choices of vehicles that I possibly could have could have gone for. And it was really a choice between two vans. One of them was an old Japanese ambulance, and the other one was a Volkswagen bus. They were both the cheapest vans for sale in Chile at the time. And I went to Chile because it's actually logistically easier for a foreigner to buy a vehicle and take it out of the country.
Where did you get the name Kombi Life? There's got to be a story behind that too.
Yeah, it's it seemed completely straightforward and a really good name until I got to the US and people started asking that question, because basically south of the US border, a Volkswagen bus is called a Kombi.
I thought that might be the case. That's why I asked it when I did, but I wasn't even sure. So
yeah, a lot of people don't really get that. I mean, it's called a Kombi, I think, in the UK also, and also in Australia. So yeah.
Yeah, we should point out you are on the island of Jersey right now. You're back in the UK after these travels. And that's your home base, right?
Yeah, I'm not here very often. I've actually just arrived here after 6 months crossing the US from the west to the east coast. I'm kind of in the mid stages of starting up an even bigger overlanding journey to come, but that's all in the kind of preparation stages right now.
Well, if you don't mind, a little bit later in the show, I'd like to hear some of your dreams and hopes for that trip as well. But we've got to get back to the one that, we started talking about, from Chile to Alaska. So you bought the Kombi, you bought the bus, and you said you were probably insane to do it. But let's just give some parameters around that. So it broke down a couple of times or more, right, on your journey. How many times did you have to rebuild this thing?
Well, let me take you from the beginning here, because, you got to picture this situation. I'm in Chile. I don't speak any Spanish. I don't know how to buy a vehicle. I don't know how to fix a vehicle. And I just basically reached out to the couch surfing community to see, for those people that don't know, the couch surfing is a way to host travelers when you're visiting a city. So if you need accommodation, for example, and you want to sleep on somebody's couch, you can go and stay with somebody. They're kind of like a local tour guide. It's all free. It's an honor system. And then perhaps when you go home, you can host travelers for a while at your residence. And so this is how I kind of got my feet into Chile. And long story short, I ended up meeting a guy who was willing to take me and help me buy a vehicle. And he kind of hooked me up with his family. And I ended up living with them for about 4 months whilst I kind of bought the Kombi and turned it from a van into something that people could sleep in.
Okay.
And so when I got this bus, the person I bought it from told me that it can only drive for 2 hours and then you have to sit and let it rest for half an hour, which probably should have been a good alarm bell for me. But for some reason, I was just, overwhelmed by this beautiful Volkswagen with all these windows around it and the 360 view. And so I just didn't really pay attention to that. And I paid the price. I was fixing that bus for a long time. I think overlanding a classic vehicle from one end of the planet to the other is I know it's an extremely difficult challenge. And by the time I got to Alaska, I think I had the engine out about 11 or 12 times.
So about a dozen times you had to drop the engine in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even the half of it. We can get into some more of it, but it's, I put in my time. Of the 6 years of driving from Chile to Alaska, approximately 12 months was spent living in various Latin mechanics, learning how to build an engine from pretty much scratch.
Wow.
Hey, ASP listeners, have you ever tried a Kind bar? You may have seen them in your local grocery store, coffee shop, or gym. They make delicious, healthy snacks using whole ingredients. Well, if you're ready to try some tasty and healthy snacks, we've got a special deal for you. Try 20 Kind snacks from 7 of their unique product lines with their new snack pack. You can enjoy 50% off and free shipping on your first snack pack when you subscribe to it through their Snack Club. Snack Club is Kind's monthly snack subscription service. Go to kindsnacks.com/sports for more details on that. I love their pressed bars like the mango apple chia bars, or I pretty much guarantee you're going to love their breakfast bars first thing in the morning when you climb out of that hammock. So take a minute and see what they're creating over at kindsnacks.com/sports and get your 50% off plus free shipping on your first order. That's kindsnacks.com/sports.
As I'm sure you know from listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast, some of the safest and best snow conditions for backcountry skiing of the whole year happen in the springtime. And Bentgate has the gear you need. Come check out the latest in alpine touring, telemark, NTN, and splitboarding gear. They have brands like Black Crows, DPS, Dynafit, G3, Icelantic, K2, Technica Blizzard, Arc'teryx, Mammoth, Solomon, Volley, Neversummer, Jones, and BCA. And you do need to be safe out there. Bentgate has the latest in avalanche safety gear. They have beacons, airbags, shovels, and probes, and they're ready to help you educate yourself on snow safety. They also rent out gear, so you can get your skis and your boots there, as well as your avalanche safety equipment. What's more, they also have free demo ski days at local resorts, so you can try out the latest gear. Now, how much fun does that sound? So swing by Bentgate in Golden, Colorado, or go to bentgate.com to find your new gear, as well as to get updates on all of their events. Did you ever think, I should just drop this thing and get something else, or maybe this trip was misguided enough that I should pivot a little bit and try something new?
Yes, I did, but I honestly felt that I needed to learn some patience, and I felt the challenges were a good opportunity to acquire new skills. So gradually through the process, I started to learn to speak Spanish. I started to realize that the main reason that I travel is to cut like this slowly, purposefully overland rather than just flying in, is so that I can engage with cultures that are different to mine and kind of try to understand them a little bit more. And that's exactly what I was getting. It wasn't how I'd planned to do it. I'd planned to do it with a coconut in my hands, sitting on a beach somewhere, but I happened to be in a mechanics, going to work every day with a couple of people that spoke very quickly and pretty filthy Spanish. And that's how I learned to kind of immerse myself in the culture.
What an amazing life experience. So there have to be, 1,001 stories that come out of that. Will you pick a story that just kind of illustrates what life was like on this journey? Share it with us.
There are so many. I mean, It's really after over 6 years, it's very difficult to kind of pick one story. But for example, let's talk about the early days, because this is largely undocumented. This was the days before I was really filming as often as I do now. I had just spent 4 months living with this family, and they were giving me accommodation and food in exchange for allowing me to work on. I would help them build cabanas at their seaside kind of ranch, and in the mornings and in the afternoons they would allow me to work on my bus. So after 4 months of that, I was itching to get out of Chile. I picked up one guy who was from the UK, so there was no language barrier there, and we headed over the Andes Mountains, over I think pretty much the highest pass between Chile and Mendoza. It's about 7,000 meters, but I'm not sure what that is in feet. I can tell you it's very high.
Oh, 7,000 meters is what, 20, over 20,000 feet, well over. I'll do the math. You keep talking.
Yeah, it's pretty high. We picked up a couple of Colombian hitchhikers that were coming from Argentina back to Chile, but they basically found themselves in this no man's land. I think it's like 13 kilometers between the Chilean and Argentine border. And they were basically stuck. Argentina had kicked them out, and Chile was not letting them in. And so we were like, well, I said I would pick up hitchhikers, so this is a good time to start. And we basically took them, managed to get them through Argentina, and we were parking in a nice, tranquil plaza, like a park in Mendoza, which is central wine country in Argentina. And then the police showed up and basically shot a guy at point blank range, not like 20 feet from the bus. And that was the first night that we spent on the trip. So it sure was an eye opener.
Wow. So this was an actual shot dead scenario?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, he basically shot him. We were kind of peering through the curtains because at the time we thought, oh, here come the police. We're going to be told we can't sleep here and asked to move on. And that wasn't what was happening. He shot a guy that we had just been speaking to a few minutes earlier. And we're not sure exactly what happened, but it's the second he hit the ground, he was gone, unfortunately. Ooh. Wow. And a few minutes later, there was 7 police cars, an ambulance turned up. Not that that was really required. And we ended up spending the night at the police station, which actually wasn't the first time that happened in South America. It was the first time. It wasn't the only time that happened in South America. We spent quite a lot of nights sleeping outside of police stations until we got to Colombia, I think.
Well, were you sleeping outside of the police station for safety reasons or because the police wanted you there?
Well, a bit of both. Often we would just find somewhere to sleep, a quiet neighborhood, somewhere that we thought looked okay. And we get a knock on the window at 3:00 in the morning. Now, if that kind of thing happened in the US, it might be a policeman saying, hey, this isn't a campsite. You can't sleep here. But in South America, they said, hey, this is not safe. Please come with me. And then they park you right outside the front of the police station where they could keep an eye on you. So they were pretty good.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about safety. You just, kick this off with a really frightening story. That must have given you some real pause or things to think about as you were starting this trip. Did it make you think maybe you were misguided and shouldn't do it?
I feel like I've got a pretty good judgment of whether a location is dangerous or not. And the place that we were parked in I would still park there today. It wasn't a dodgy area. I think it was a corrupt cop. And I don't think that there was anything bad going on in terms of like the person we were speaking with that got shot wasn't much of a thug. He certainly didn't do anything to the policeman that warranted getting shot. And so, sometimes you do have to have your wits about you, but, sometimes things can happen that are out of your control. And I guess that my way of thinking is that I would not really want to just kind of sit at home wrapped up in cotton wool just in case something could happen. I'd rather be out there and living life and being on the edge of my comfort zone. just, doing so with caution, not living recklessly in South America. I'm sure some people listening to that story will probably think, oh, it's, that's confounded all my fears. And there's no way I would do that. But that was the only time that happened. And I spent 6 years on the Pan American Highway.
Yeah. And in 6 years of life, no matter where you are on the planet, you could see something similar, right?
Yeah, I don't want to pick on any particular American cities, but I have to be honest with you. At times, we felt a little more unsafe in the US than we did south of the border, which would probably surprise people.
I'm not really surprised, just because I've talked to so many travelers and having traveled around. There are parts of the United States, parts of different cities where it just doesn't make a lot of sense to hang out at the wrong time of the day, that sort of a thing. And I think that people in the U.S. understand that, but they also are afraid to travel sometimes. And that kind of cracks me up because, if you know how to stay out of dodgy places in the cities right here at home, then that's really all you need to do if you travel, is watch out for the dodgy places.
Yeah, exactly what you said. It's if you can handle yourself at home, there's no reason why you can't handle yourself somewhere else.
Well, here's one question that did pop up I want to ask you about, and then we'll move on to other subjects. But you mentioned that you thought the policeman may be corrupt. That's actually the one thing that troubles me. And here you can alleviate my fears. That's the one thing that troubles me, is not so much that the people might be dangerous in some way in a country when we travel. It's the system. Is the system going to turn against us? The government, the police, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern. There's always corrupt police, not in Chile, because Chile, they have a very good police force, and they're, I think, one of the only countries in South America where there isn't a lot of corruption. But all of the other ones, for sure, especially Mexico. Mexico is terrible for trying to bribe tourists. And I'm proud to say, after 10 years of travel, I have never once paid a bribe. I literally flatly refuse to do it. And I feel like it's my responsibility as a traveler to not pay a bribe, because if I do it, they know that the next tourist that comes down the road is likely to do it too. And so I just sit there and tell them I have all the time in the world and I'm not paying it, no matter what they say I did. And they always, every single time, let me go. And I've been pulled over many, many times.
Wow. Well, you kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask about border crossings and things like that. And it sounds like if you're patient enough, it works out.
For the most part, I did run into a pretty serious show-stopping drama towards the end of the trip, which involved border crossings and visas and things like that, which basically put me... That's quite an interesting story. I don't know if you want to get into that one.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
Well, I guess near the end of the trip, it was 1,000 miles to go to the finish line, and my transmission blew up. At this point, I'd had the engine out 10 times, and I was starting to lose my patience. And the transmission blew up. There was, we had just 1,000 miles to go to the Arctic Ocean, which was where I really wanted to get to end the trip. And I ended up basically leaving the bus because it was August in Alaska, winter was coming, I was running out of time, I was unable to find a replacement transmission. A South American Kombi is kind of a unique beast, and I wasn't able to find the part anywhere in North America. I called Australia, the UK, I just could not find a transmission. So I decided to go home to Jersey, where I am now, to basically try to find a transmission, and to also apply for a visa extension, because I'd already been in and out of the US a couple of times on the kind of free 90-day visa waiver that we get given as UK citizens. And unfortunately, the embassy said no, I couldn't have the visa, mainly because I didn't have any ties to my home country. And this is a problem that faces a lot of kind of long-term travelers. I have a long history of a clean passport. I've always left every single country I've visited before my visa was up, so as to not overstay, because that is the one major thing that I'm always worried about. And they said, no, you can't have a visa. And in doing so, that basically banned me from going back to the US, where my bus was waiting for me in Alaska. So even though I managed to find a replacement transmission, I wasn't able to go back and finish the trip, or so I thought. I basically resolved that by kicking up a huge fuss on social media and asking my supporters and followers to write to their local senators and congressmen, and even the governor of Alaska and the ambassador of the US Embassy in London, asking for me to be able to finish this trip, because after 5 years of trying to get to the Arctic Ocean, I was just 1,000 miles short. And
Wow.
you know what? It actually worked. When I went to apply for the visa again, I went to the US Embassy in Canada. And when I turned up for the appointments, they said, "Hey, hang on, I know you." And they recognized me from the story that had been on the Alaskan news and all of the fuss that had been kicked up. And they basically said, "Sure, you can finish your trip, no problem. Here's a visa." And I was allowed to drive the last 1,000 miles and finish this 6-year expedition.
Do you think that's because you found the right person? Sometimes I wonder if when people get a no in these situations, if it's just the decision that one person made, and if they went somewhere else and talked to someone else, maybe they would get a different response.
Absolutely, that was the situation. I mean, the problem with these interviews is they have to process so many people in a day. They don't really have time to listen to your whole backstory.
Right.
And even though I explained to them, like, hey, I just want to go and drive 1,000 miles and then I'm done. It didn't matter. I didn't tick the boxes. I hadn't been home for a while. I was a potential risk of emigrating to the US. And so the answer was no.
But then in the end, you were allowed to.
Yeah, the story doesn't quite end there, though, unfortunately. Whilst I was on my way back to the US and celebrating going up to Alaska to pick up my bus, our bus actually caught fire on its own where it was stored in Alaska.
Oh, no.
Due to an electrical fault. So within a week, we were up there and our entire home had been destroyed.
What did you do?
We restored it. I mean, I'd always promised that I would give away our Kombi to one of our subscribers at the end of my trip. And I felt a little guilty that it was in such bad condition. So myself, my girlfriends, my little dog Alaska, named after the trip. She was from Peru, by the way. We picked her up in Peru. And one of our supporters, Brett, a subscriber of the channel, he drove us up the Alaskan highway and spent 3 weeks with us, helping us restore the bus so that we could finish the trip. That guy was a legend.
Wow. So this life experience must really change a person's, perception of humanity. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? How did the way that you perceive people grow?
I was at the mercy of a lot of people. I broke down in a rural town in Alaska in the first place, and I was taken in by an Alaskan family who took us out fishing and subsistence hunting so that we could, be part of their family whilst we figured out what we were going to do with the bus. To get out of Alaska from that rural community, I was taken in by the captain of a sailing boat who basically gave us accommodation as we helped him sail down a couple of 1,000 miles so we could get out of Alaska. At every single junction, when I've run into problems, I've met good people. So basically, whenever you are in bad situations, you meet the best people.
Now, here's a question. You say you meet the best people, and I believe you. But is that like the first person you come across, or does it take patience? Do you have to wait a while and interact with a lot of people before the right people show up?
Yeah, you think that would be the case, right? But really, I think people, in almost every single situation, it was almost the first person that we spoke to that we needed help, that offered help to us. We would say, like, hey, we're in trouble here. We need to find a mechanic or something like that. And they'd be like, well, you want to try and do that at my house? I can help you with that. Just come back to my place.
Wow.
And, we'd end up tearing the engine apart, and we'd end up living there for 2 weeks and become the best of friends. And yeah, we were very lucky with the people we met. And it happened far too frequently for it to be a coincidence.
It's just human nature.
I think it is.
Well, let's go back to the one people might say kind of quirky idea about this trip, and that was that you were going to pick people up and let them stay with you in the van. And were you targeting travelers or locals, or were you targeting anybody? How did that work out?
We did. I did pick up anybody. I was not very fussy on who they were, but for the most part, it was other travelers. Locals tend to just want to stay around wherever it is that we pick them up. So the locals that joined us were often hitchhikers that were getting from A to B. For the most part, the people we picked up were travelers kind of on extended journeys. And that was really the best fit for us because they were on a similar agenda, seeing new places and open with their schedule.
So what kind of friendships developed out of that? A lot of people would say, you know what, I might pick up a traveler, but I'm not sleeping in the same bus with a traveler the first night. I got to get to know people first.
Yeah, very few people would sleep in a bus on the first night. I met a guy, here's an example. I met a guy, I think it was the first night that I was alone in the bus. Now, I'd driven all the way from Chile. This was midway through Colombia in a town called Cali. And I hadn't spent one single night in the bus on my own since I left the trip. I'd always found somebody or picked somebody up or usually there was multiple people. And the first night that I was on my own, a Venezuelan motorcyclist overtook me in the Colombian mountains and flagged me down. And I was like, this is a bit weird. And so he was obviously a traveler. Like, I wouldn't stop in that situation for anybody. It could be dangerous, but he, had a lot of backpacks on the side of his motorbike. He had foreign plates. I knew he was on a trip like I was. So I stopped to see what he was saying. And he basically ended up saying that he was going to Cali as well. He was looking for somewhere to stay and asking if I knew anything about the town because it's a little bit dodgy. And we ended up sleeping in the back of the bus together just that one night. But, it just goes to show that was my approach with how I would kind of meet people and select people. I was really open, and I offered my home kind of without any restraints or restrictions on my part. And I was always met with kind of a loving heart as well. People treated me as I treated them, which was quite nice.
What an amazing way to do this. And that means you're going to meet a lot of people and get to know them pretty intimately right off the bat. I mean, wow. So what was the longest that people stayed with you?
Well, we had people staying from a few hours up to a few months. I mean, I met my girlfriend in Mexico and she's still here, and it's been a couple of years already. So,
okay, girlfriends aside.
Yeah, that might be cheating. The longest I think a friend stayed was probably like 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months in a small Volkswagen bus with someone that you didn't know beforehand. That's a real study of human nature as well. Did things work out pretty well? Was there a lot of conflict, or did it generally go the way you had hoped to?
I would like to say it was all sunshine and lollipops, but of course there was conflict and arguments. I had to learn how to share this tiny space with people at the same time that they had to learn it as well. So in the early days, it was a bit of a challenge, to be honest. And I had to learn a lot of patience, and I grew a lot as a person through this process. I became a lot less selfish. Bear in mind that when I'm sharing it with another person, there's usually 3 other people in there as well. Like, the most we ever had actually driving was 10, and the most we ever had sleeping in there was 6.
So that's tight quarters. That's fun. Did you have to establish some ground rules? Say, yeah, you can hang with us and sleep in the van, but here's how this works?
The only thing I would ever tell people is that it's not a free ride. We share the cost of gasoline, and we share the cost of food. So if we're cooking something and we're going to the supermarket to buy camp supplies, everybody chips in. But we never charge for the accommodation or the adventures or anything like that. So it made it a really cheap way to travel. It made it something that I could afford, because traveling for a long time can be expensive, especially if you're crossing an entire planet, as I was. So having people to share the petrol costs with made it affordable for me. And this will probably surprise you, Kurt, but my daily budget for the majority of the trip, certainly south of the US border, was around $10 US a day.
So I know that can be done. And I've talked to a lot of travelers who have done that, just very inexpensive travel. Did that make you feel like you were super, super conservative with your money, or was $10 a day all right?
$10 a day for a single person traveling would be pretty tight. The way it worked for us is that if there's 6 people in the bus, everybody puts in $10. That's $60 for the day. And like that, it's actually quite affordable, especially if you're cooking your own meals.
Nice. So we're starting to draw out several different angles that made this possible. One was that the people that stayed with you in the bus helped to pay for fuel and food. Okay, that was part of it. You bought an inexpensive vehicle, but then you had to repair it all the time. I don't know if you came out ahead on that one or not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, if you, all up, I definitely put in probably 5 times the initial purchase price on repairs, and I did all of the maintenance myself. It's probably why I kept on breaking down. But the engine rebuild after engine rebuilds does get expensive, but for the most part, I was using kind of recycled used parts that I would find and molds to my purpose, or buy 2 engines for a couple of $100 and take them apart. And that's why I was in various mechanics for such a long period of time, living alongside these guys, because I was learning how to build an engine that would actually get me to Alaska. It took a while, but eventually, after I think engine removal number, let's say 8 or 9, I finally managed to get enough good parts to build a decent engine that got me from Mexico all the way to the Arctic and pretty much back again.
It just sounds like, I keep laughing because it sounds like such a fun life adventure. The ups, the downs, the struggles. I can't imagine what it must have been like to have to rebuild the engine that many times. And then, just to add insult to injury, the whole thing burns and you have to rebuild a burned out shell. Wow.
Yeah, that was the biggest test of all. And I'll have to be honest that I was ready to throw in the towel at that point. I mean, I'd made it to Alaska. I was 1,000 miles short of the finish line. But after it's like several years of trying to get to Alaska, I felt like I really needed to explore the state and kind of have an understanding of what it was like. My trip, the project was called Hasta Alaska, which means until Alaska in Spanish. And I felt like I really needed to see something of that state, after such a long effort of getting there.
Right. So did you eventually make it all the way up to the Arctic Circle? Did you go to Prudhoe Bay? What was your target?
I did. I got all the way. I drove up the Dalton Highway to Dead Horse, the last town in Alaska, the last town on the Pan American Highway, I should say. And then I wanted to go to Prudhoe Bay, but unfortunately, since 9/11, they have closed the last 10 miles of the road. And so now you have to pay $70 to go on a bus for the last 10 miles. Now, I don't think, for me, I was thinking, I've driven here, that's okay. But can you imagine for the people that cycle the Pan American Highway? Right. They get all the way there and they get told, now you have to get on a bus for the last 10 miles.
Oh. How disappointing.
So I didn't do that. I actually flew to an island in the Arctic Ocean called Kaktovik, or Barter Island it's called, and the town was Kaktovik. It's a tiny little Inupiat Eskimo community who live up there. I think there's about 250 people, And that for me was a much more authentic experience of Arctic life rather than being on a tour. And that pretty much sets the philosophy of the trip. I try not to do tours. I try to do my own, kind of seek out my own adventures.
Nice.
It's summertime now, where the days are hot and the nights are for sleeping in tents and hammocks. Make sure you've got one of our lightweight camp stoves ready to go in your pack when the move strikes to go camping. Both the 180 stove and the 180 flame are designed to burn the abundant wood fuels you find on the ground instead of requiring you to haul in heavy and messy camp fuels. Take a minute to head over to our site at www.180tack.com to check out these American-made stoves that are built to last. Your purchase will be helping the Adventure Sports Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Well, what about income to support the trip? You still had to have money coming in from somewhere. So this came from your social media, is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, like the first years of travel was all from savings from work. I worked every single extra shift that I possibly could to save up every penny that I could to invest in myself and have, a huge adventure. But obviously that money started to run out at some point. You can't travel for a decade and off of savings. It's cheap, but it's not that cheap. So luckily these days, I've managed to turn my passion for travel and exploring into a career. And now I can make a small amount of money from social media, from the videos we create. I think when I first monetized our YouTube channel after about 3 years of doing it, I finally realized you could click on the button and start making money. That was a bit of a shock.
So through advertising, I assume.
Yes. Yeah. Through the AdSense, and the larger your audience grows, the more opportunities there are to generate revenue and working with brands and having people get behind you. So for the next project, I'm quite lucky to be working with a few people that are going to enable us to tackle an even bigger project.
So you don't have to give us details, but people are going to want to know the scale of this. Is it just enough money to kind of help out, or were you able to build a career that says, you know what, I could do this for a long time based on this?
You know what, Kurt? To be perfectly honest with you, if I really hustled at what I do, I could make a decent living. And when I say decent, comparable to any career that one of my friends of a similar age has. But the way that I run my YouTube channel, I don't like uploading content all the time just for the sake of getting something in front of people, just for the sake of getting clicks and generating money. I actually have only uploaded 2 videos this year. I've been filming every single day. I'm filming for my next series right now, but I'm not uploading anything because I just really value the time of my audience, and I don't want to put crap in front of their eyes. And so I would rather piece together a story that takes several months to film and then upload 2 or 3 videos that's like edited concisely and is engaging and interesting to watch, and something that the people will actually remember, rather than just put it out just so I can get paid. So I'm not very smart from a business perspective in this way, and we do struggle financially because of that. But it's important to me to only produce quality content, and it's kind of why our channel's a little different to your usual YouTube channel.
Well, thank you for being candid about that. And I have to say, the videos that I have watched were very well done, and I really enjoyed them a lot. It's not just that you shot some good shots. You did some good editing, and I really like the format and the way that you put it together. Very interesting, very fun to watch. You want to see the next one as soon as the last one ended, sort of a thing. So well done.
Yes, thanks, Kurt. I mean, that's the idea. It's more a story that we try to tell based on the adventure so that people can experience it with us, because I get it. Not everybody is in a position to throw in their career and take off across the planet in an old Volkswagen. And that's a big part of why I share it, so that other people can experience it vicariously with us. And we spend months and months and months editing the footage that we capture, so that people can do that, and so we're not wasting their time.
Well, it is evident that you've done a lot of work on these because they really are high quality. You also have some books. Now, have the books been as beneficial financially as you hoped?
I never really intended them to be a money maker, but they do, it trickles in. We have 3 digital books, ebooks that people can download. One of them is the early days of the story, things like the shooting and stuff that happened when the cameras weren't rolling in the early days before I really got serious about capturing the adventure and before I really started the YouTube channel. The other 2 are kind of pitched to allow people to follow in our footsteps. Like, we wanted to share some of the knowledge that we've gained over the last 6 years. So that's like a book to basically tell people how they can live off grid and on the move, and how to set up a camper van so that you can actually live comfortably, because it might look like it's like the best time in the world, but we're very honest about what this kind of lifestyle is like. It does come with its own challenges, and it can be difficult sometimes. And we're really clear about that on our YouTube channel and everything we create. We don't want to mislead people and tell them this is the best thing in the world and it's better than what you're doing now and what you should do what we're doing. It's right for some people and it's not right for other people. And we want people to understand that. Otherwise it's very, very easy in this day and age of social media to see all these amazing photos of other people living their dreams and then think that you can do the same thing, but it's not always the case, and it's not always exactly like it looks on the Instagram feed either.
Right. And thanks for being honest about that. But it is something that can be done, and you've proven it. You can have a big life adventure. It just may not be, what do they say? All unicorns and butterflies.
Yeah, you absolutely can. It can be something that's available to anybody. And that's why we have those books, so that people can learn how to do it themselves and they can follow in our footsteps or find their own adventure if that's something that they want to do.
Well, the book that you alluded to is Off Grid and on the Move, and it's called Vehicle Dwelling, Expert's Guide to Nomadic Living. That sounds really interesting to me. The first one you mentioned is called Overlanding South America, The Untold Story. You have a third one. It's Off Grid and Solar Electrical Systems. So I guess that's just what it sounds like, huh?
Exactly. A big part of living off grid is kind of maximizing your solar presence, and that can be very rewarding in itself. As much as we travel, we also produce all of our content off grid from the back of a bus. We edit all of our videos there, and we work with the sun, and there's some strategy that goes into that, and there's also a lot of equipment and tech that goes into it too. So we try to keep that updated with the best tips for people with the evolving technology.
Nice. So these are ebooks. How can people get a copy?
We have them on our website on kombilife.com. They're usually linked. We have a whole series of content which is free for people too. I understand that a lot of people that are interested in this kind of lifestyle don't necessarily have a lot of money, because it can be quite cost effective. You can actually travel and live in a vehicle for 6 months or 12 months or even a few years, and you can end up spending less money than you would if you're just living in a house and paying rent and everything like that. So there's enormous advantages to living this lifestyle of being off grid and on the move, and we want to enable people to do it more than anything. So there's a whole bunch of free content on our website too, based around that product that we sell.
And that's kombilife.com. That's KOMBI life.com. Man, I wish that we had time to continue hearing stories and to dive a little bit deeper. But we've filled up our time slot. One more story. There has to be a life experience in there somewhere that you'll always remember. Could you share something like that with us?
My favorite experiences are the ones when I connect closely with the locals, when I really experience life in a different way. And I think one of the experiences that stands out for me greatly is in stumbling upon a little fishing village, or a family of fishermen in Baja California. And they took us in. I think we were there for 8 days. At that time, I was traveling with one girl from Washington who had just flown in to join me for the Mexican adventure and drive off into the desert, not knowing me. She was obviously insane, but we had a great time. And, we were taken in by this family, and we got to learn how they fish and how they process octopus. I think they made us paint a sign for them with the ink from the octopus at one point. It was just a completely off the wall experience. It was something that we just stumbled upon. We had just been driving out on a road, literally following the sunset, because we wanted to keep watching the sunset, and we just kept driving towards the sun, and we found this family, and they took us in, and we got to see how they live. And when you see a family living so simply and so happy, that's really, that was a big message to me. It reinforced my belief of, you don't need material things to be happy. And it's really experiences over possessions, which is the truly valuable thing. And I think that's something that stuck with me from that experience.
I love that. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing from your experiences, with us, with our audience. I'm inspired. I think it sounds like an amazing life experience, and I appreciate your time that you took out of your busy schedule to be a part of what we're doing here. So thanks, man.
No problem. Thank you very much for having us, Kurt. Hopefully we can speak to you further down the road when we're somewhere in Asia or something on our next big overlanding adventure.
Well, we do have to hear what's, on the books for the future. So what's your next target?
Well, I'll keep it very brief, but we are basically planning to drive across the entire world now. Since we've driven from the south to the north, we are now driving from the west to the east, with the end destination being Australia. So that will be overland through Europe, possibly some of Africa, and through Asia. And it's going to be one heck of an adventure. We have a vehicle which we found in the Arizona desert. It's 45 years old. And we are midway through prepping that for the next big adventure. And that series will start coming out the end of this year. So if any of you guys want to follow us for that adventure, now is a really good time to come and join us for it.
Nice. So that will all be on Kombi Life as well?
Yeah, it'll be there on the YouTube channel and the website. That's all in the pipeline. So I'm very, very excited, because this is a huge challenge for us.
Wow. Well, good for you, Ben. Awesome. We will follow you, and we'd love to have you back on the show periodically so that you can share more recent stories and experiences with us. So we'd love to live a little vicariously through your travels, if you'll allow us.
Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. And for all the listeners out there, thanks again for listening in. And until the next show, I'm not going to just say get out there and have some fun, which we always say. I'm going to say start thinking about how you can build a life outside of the box while you're getting out there and having some fun.
Wow, what a cool story from Ben Jamin. If that doesn't inspire you to try living a life outside the box, I don't know what will. You can find out more from Ben at kombilife.com. That's KOMBILIFE.com. He's also got a YouTube channel at Kombi Life, and you can find out more about his 3 books on kombilife.com. So check him out and be inspired. Thanks for listening, guys, and now maybe you too will consider living a life outside the box.